The rain tasted like rust and regret, washing down the grime-streaked permaglass of Neo-Veridia's lower sectors. Below, the streets pulsed with the artificial glow of cheap neurostim bars and black market cybernetic stalls. A chaotic symphony of desperation and ambition played out in flickering neon. My own ambition felt like a corroded circuit, shorted out years ago. Name's Jax. Used to be a decent memory broker, trafficking in curated experiences, synthetic emotions, the usual gray market fare. Then a deal went sideways, a corrupted memory shard fried a client's higher functions, and suddenly I was toxic, cast out from the digital parlors, scraping by on petty data retrieval gigs, haunted by the ghost of a reputation I couldn't outrun. Credits dwindled. Rent on my coffin-sized tab unit was overdue. The city, with its relentless hum of data streams I could no longer ethically, or legally, access, felt like it was actively trying to suffocate me. Desperation makes you scroll through dangerous corners of the deep web, places where job postings look less like opportunities and more like traps baited with fool's gold. That's where I found it. No corporate logo, no contact info, just an encrypted, self-deleting post on a ghost board known for trading in forbidden biotech and neurological wetware. Artisan Required. Proficiency in nonlinear synaptic mapping and emotional resonance filtering essential. Experience with organic memory matrices preferred. Project: Restoration of fragmented experiential archives. Location: Sector Null, Substrata. Compensation: generous, performance-based. Absolute discretion mandatory. Initiate contact via chrono-locked resonance pulse, embedded key. Failure implies incompatibility. Synaptic mapping? Organic memory matrices? Sector Null? It sounded like high-level neuroarchitecture work, way above my pay grade, or more likely, deeply illegal. Sector Null wasn't just old, it was foundational, the abandoned, geothermally unstable bedrock upon which Neo-Veridia was built, sealed off decades ago after, well, rumors varied, none pleasant. But SIQ irrelevant wasn't mentioned. Maybe my history as a memory broker, my feel for fragmented data, was what they needed? And generous compensation, the phrase glittered like a data diamond in the muck of my current existence. The chrono-locked resonance pulse wasn't a link, it was an instruction. It required interfacing my aging, slightly glitchy neural implant directly with a specific, unstable public data node known for temporal distortions, and emitting a complex sequence of timed cognitive pulses. Essentially, using my own brain as a highly specific, potentially dangerous tuning fork. One wrong pulse, 1 millisecond off, and best case scenario, nothing happened. Worst case, synaptic fragmentation wasn't just jargon. Took me hours, fueled by cheap synth coffee and sheer desperation, huddled in my dark hab unit, tuning my neural output, fingers trembling as I initiated the sequence. The feedback hit like a physical blow, a wave of temporal static, fragmented images, rain on chrome, impossible geometric shapes, eyes watching from darkness, and the chilling sensation of other minds brushing against my own across the time-locked channel. Then, connection. A single line of text burned onto my optical feed. Resonance compatible. Profile: Jax, Croft. Memory broker: retired. Acceptable parameters. Proceed to Transit Hub Omega Null, Sector 8 Deep Transit, at 2359. Board unmarked gravity lift. No luggage. No queries. Silence maintained. The connection severed, leaving my implant buzzing unpleasantly and my head throbbing. They knew my name, my history. The vetting process was already far deeper than I'd realized. Transit Hub Omega Null wasn't on any public schematic. Following the coordinates embedded in the message led me through deserted, echoing deep transit tunnels, long abandoned by the city's sleek maglev system, now home only to dripping water, mutated fungi pulsing with faint bioluminescence, and the ghosts of forgotten commutes. The air grew thick, warm, smelling of ozone and geothermal brine. At precisely 23:59, a section of the tunnel wall slid open silently, revealing not a train platform, but a stark, cylindrical chamber bathed in cold white light. An unmarked gravity lift capsule waited, door hissed open. No operator, no other passengers. Stepping inside felt like entering a morgue drawer. The door slid shut, and the lift descended. Not smoothly, but with a series of disconcerting lurches and drops, plunging deep into the planet's crust, far below even Sector Null's official boundaries. My ears popped painfully. The temperature climbed, the air growing thick, humid, recycled. Finally, with a soft bump, the lift stopped. The door opened onto a scene that defied explanation. Not a sterile lab, not a concrete bunker. It looked organic. I stood on a narrow platform overlooking a vast cavern, illuminated by the soft, pulsating bioluminescence of colossal, fungal-like structures that grew across the walls and ceiling, forming intricate, glowing networks. The air was warm, thick with the scent of damp earth, exotic spores, and that same faint sweetness I'd smelled accessing the Loom. Below, connected by bridges woven from living vines, were clusters of ovoid structures, like giant, translucent seed pods, humming faintly. And weaving between them, tending to the pods, adjusting the glowing fungal networks, were figures. Tall, slender, multi-limbed, moving with an insectal grace, identical to Unit 7 from the Arboretum, their iridescent carapaces gleaming in the soft light. One of the figures detached itself and glided silently up a vine ramp towards my platform. Its multifaceted eyes fixed on me. Complex clicks and whistles filled the air, instantly translated by my implant. Designate Jax, Croft. Welcome to the Synaptic Nursery. I am Proctor 11. Your sensitivity is required for the mending. Mending? I asked, voice hoarse, still reeling from the impossible sight. Mending what? Proctor 11 gestured with a delicate limb towards the humming, glowing pods below. Fragmented consciousness. Traumatic imprints. Neural static. Harvested from the surface data streams, the city's psychic detritus. They arrive damaged. Incoherent. We weave coherence. Restore the pattern. Prepare them for reintegration. Reintegration? Into what? Before I could ask, Proctor 11 glided closer, extending a thin appendage tipped with shimmering filaments, identical to those on the apprentice node chair. Your first task is assessment. Interface required. Connect to processing pod alpha. Observe the fragment. Identify the primary dissonance. Do not attempt direct weaving yet. Observe only. Protocol alpha must be maintained. It indicated a nearby, smaller pod, pulsing with a faint, erratic blue light. The filaments hovered inches from the base of my skull. The memory of Oakhaven, the terrifying potential for contamination, for bleed-through, surged. But the pod pulsed, emitting a low, almost mournful hum, and tangled within that sound, I could feel it, a raw, fragmented echo of pain, confusion, loneliness. A consciousness trapped, damaged, waiting. My old broker instincts, The empathy that had once allowed me to curate experiences stirred. This wasn't just data, it felt like a fractured soul. Hesitantly, remembering the Weaver's protocols, I nodded. The filaments descended. Connection initiated. The mending had begun. The connection solidified, and the sterile blue light of the alcove vanished, replaced by the suffocating darkness of the memory fragment. It wasn't like watching a recording, it was being there. The damp, mossy stone cold beneath my small hands. The rhythmic drip, drip, drip echoing not just in the space, but within my skull. The smell of wet earth and stagnant water filled my nostrils. And the terror, oh gods, the terror. Pure, undiluted childhood panic, the certainty of being lost, hunted, alone in an immense, crushing darkness, pulsed through my veins. The low, guttural breathing sound seemed to vibrate the very air I desperately tried to draw into tiny, inadequate lungs. Focus, cultivator, Proctor 11's clicks resonated, a calm anchor point amidst the borrowed nightmare. Perceive the dissonance. The fractured pattern. Fighting against the overwhelming emotional bleed, I forced my artist's eye, my pattern recognition skills, onto the sensory input. The Proctor was right, it was fractured. The rhythmic drip wasn't steady, it skipped, stuttered, drip, drip, drip. The faint, flickering orange light source, barely visible in the memory's periphery, pulsed erratically, casting shadows that lurched and distorted in ways that didn't match the light source. The guttural breathing felt incomplete, lacking a fundamental resonance, like a recording with the bass frequencies crudely filtered out. The terror itself, while overwhelming, felt frayed. Edges rough, lacking the smooth continuity of a whole experience. It was a memory loop shattered by trauma. Identify, visualize, mend, Proctor 11 guided. The neural display integrated into the chairs had flared, showing the abstract representation, swirling grays and blacks of fear, punctuated by broken lines, the drip, flickering static, the light, and dull, discordant color patches, the breathing. Following the Proctor's guidance, I focused my intent. Visualized the steady drip, 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 pouring my own sense of rhythm into the broken line until it flowed smoothly on the display. Focused on the orange light, picturing a constant, unwavering glow, smoothing the static into a steady luminance. Focused on the breathing, imagining the missing depth, the full, terrifying resonance, enriching the dull color patch until it pulsed with a cohesive, albeit horrifying, presence. With each mental correction, glowing filaments extended from my chair, connecting to the vast, pulsing loom in the main cavern. The abstract pattern shifted, reformed, the fractures knitting together, the dissonant elements harmonizing into a single, terrifyingly coherent whole. The memory fragment playing in my head sharpened. The drips became relentless, metronomic. The light held steady, revealing more detail in the oppressive darkness, glistening, unseen walls closing in. The breathing became a tangible presence, deep, resonant, seeming to emanate from the stone itself. The terror was no longer frayed, it was polished, focused, absolute. A perfected moment of childhood dread, now seamlessly archived. Pattern stabilized. Coherence restored, Proctor 11 clicked, the connection severing abruptly. I gasped, thrown back into my own senses, the sterile blue light of the alcove blinding after the memory's darkness. The phantom cold lingered, the echo of terror still vibrating deep within me. Before I could process, the synaptic flush protocol initiated, not the agonizing assault from Oakhaven, but a gentler, though still unpleasant, wave of warm, pulsing light and soft, layered white noise, designed to soothe and overwrite. It felt less like sandblasting and more like wiping a slate with a damp cloth. Flush complete, Proctor 11 announced as the light and noise subsided. Minor resonance residue detected. Within acceptable parameters for baseline class gamma sensitivity. Proceed to log. Acceptable parameters? It still felt like shards of that child's fear were lodged behind my own thoughts. Shaking, I moved to the logging console integrated beside the chair. The interface prompted Fragment ID, PN Alpha 7. Source signature, unknown, PRE Cataclysm Child. Primary dissonance, fear/abandonment. Corrections logged. I typed, my fingers feeling clumsy, trying to translate the raw experience and my intuitive mending into clinical language. Described the arrhythmic drip, the flickering light, the incomplete breathing. Logged the visualization techniques used. Noted the minor resonance residue. As I worked, Proctor 11 observed silently, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the console's glow. When I hit submit, it tilted its head. Log analysis complete, its clicks translated. Correction efficiency, optimal. Resonance residue, elevated but stable. Cultivator Kaido exhibits high aptitude for pattern harmonization. Proceeding to Phase 2, Introduction to Weaving Interface. Weaving interface? I wasn't just observing and correcting anymore. Correct, Proctor 11 confirmed, seeming to read my thoughts. Your sensitivity allows for direct manipulation of the Loom's resonant matrix. Phase 2 involves learning basic thread manipulation, reinforcing stable patterns, isolating minor corruptions, initiating controlled resonance dampening. You will now interface with Pod Beta 3. Fragment exhibits low-level anxiety matrix, suitable for introductory weaving. It gestured towards one of the larger, humming, translucent pods in the main cavern, this one glowing with a soft, pulsing green light. Inside, a faint, indistinct humanoid shadow shifted restlessly. Low-level anxiety? Compared to the primal terror I just experienced, it sounded almost relaxing. Almost. Proctor 11 led me out of the alcove, across one of the living vine bridges spanning the dimly lit chasm below. The air here was warmer, thicker with the scent of spores and alien blooms. Reaching Pod Beta 3, Proctor 11 placed one of its delicate appendages on the pod's translucent surface. The green light pulsed brighter. Prepare for interface, cultivator. Remember Protocol 5, do not weave personal memories. Observe. Guide. Harmonize. Filaments, finer and more numerous than those in the alcove chair, extended silently from the pod's surface, hovering near my temples. No restraints this time. Just the humming pod, the shifting shadow within, and the filaments waiting to connect me directly to another fragmented consciousness, ready for me to not just observe, but to weave. The responsibility felt immense, terrifying. Taking a shallow breath, I nodded. The filaments descended. The connection initiated by the filaments from Pod Beta 3 was smoother, less jarring than the pod chair, but also felt deeper. More intimate. It wasn't just receiving sensory data, it felt like my consciousness was gently, invasively, merging with the fragmented mind within the pod. The boundary felt thinner, more permeable. The memory wasn't a loop this time, but a continuous, low-level hum of anxiety. Not sharp terror, but a persistent, gnawing dread, like waiting for bad news that never arrives. Sensation, a slight tightness in the chest, shallow breathing. The faint, persistent smell of antiseptic and recycled air. Visuals, blurred, Indistinct shapes moving just outside peripheral vision, never quite resolving. Sound, a low, almost subsonic hum overlaid with the distant, muffled sound of rhythmic metallic impacts, like machinery operating several levels away. Emotion, free-floating anxiety, a sense of impending doom without a clear source, a feeling of being watched, judged, analyzed. It was deeply unpleasant, a constant, low-grade psychic friction. Compared to the raw terror of the first fragment, this felt insidious, corrosive. Observe the anxiety matrix, Proctor 11's clicks translated in my mind. Identify the core dissonance. The source of the persistent fear loop. Focusing past the immediate discomfort, I tried to analyze the pattern, just as I had with the terror fragment. The anxiety felt pervasive, but were there specific triggers within the sensory data? The rhythmic metallic impacts, they seemed to correlate with slight spikes in the anxiety level. The blurred shapes in the periphery, when they seemed closer, the tightness in the chest intensified. The feeling of being watched felt like the baseline, the constant hum upon which the other anxieties were layered. Neural display active, Proctor 11 informed me. My mental vision shifted, overlaid now with the abstract representation of the memory. Swirling patterns of muted gray and sickly green represented the anxiety. Sharp, discordant spikes corresponded to the metallic impacts. Flickering static represented the blurred peripheral shapes. Interface weaving tools, Proctor 11 instructed. Reinforce stable emotional pathways. Dampen fear response harmonics. Isolate and contain trigger points. This was different from just visualizing coherence. My intent now seemed to directly manipulate the glowing filaments connecting me to the loom, and through the loom, to the fragment within the pod. Focusing on the muted gray of the baseline anxiety, I pushed gently with my mind, visualizing a calmer, steadier hue, a soft blue, perhaps. On the neural display, the gray patterns flickered, resisted, then slowly began to shift, incorporating faint threads of blue. The tightness in its chest lessened fractionally. Next, the discordant spikes, the metallic impacts. I focused on them, visualizing them smoothing out, becoming less jarring, integrating into the background hum. Filaments pulsed. The spikes on the display softened, rounded, their dissonant frequency lowering. The phantom sound of impacts grew fainter in my head. This was working. It felt like tuning a complex, multi-layered instrument with thought alone. The anxiety wasn't vanishing, but it was becoming less sharp, less overwhelming. Harmonizing. Then I addressed the flickering static, the blurred shapes in the periphery, the feeling of being watched. This felt more complex, more deeply embedded in the fragment structure. As I focused, trying to visualize the static resolving, smoothing out, I felt resistance. Not just passive resistance, but an active pushback. And bleeding through, faint but unmistakable, was a different emotional signature layered beneath the anxiety. Not fear. Not sorrow. But cold, analytical curiosity. The feeling of being observed, not by something menacing, but by something detached, scientific. My concentration wavered. Where was that coming from? Was it part of the original memory? Or it would bleed through? From where? From me? The marker within me pulsed faintly, its own cold curiosity resonating slightly with the unexpected sensation from the fragment. Warning, empathic bleed detected. Proctor 11's clicks cut through my confusion. External emotional signature merging with fragment matrix. Disengage specific thread manipulation. Focus on baseline harmonization only. I tried to pull back, focusing again on the overall blue hue, reinforcing the calm. But the flicker of cold curiosity lingered, both within the fragments pattern on the display and within my own mind. Had I inadvertently woven a piece of the marker's consciousness, its analytical nature, into this anxiety fragment while trying to smooth the static? Protocol 5. Do not weave personal memories or emotions. Did that include the emotions, the very nature of the alien fragment I carried? Just as I struggled to disentangle my influence, another anomaly occurred. A flash. Quick, almost subliminal, within the memory stream. Not part of the anxiety matrix. Something else. An image, stark white walls, sterile blue light, the integration pod, my memory of waking up after the first session. It flashed through the fragment, leaving a shimmering residue on the neural display before vanishing. My blood ran cold. Flush doesn't erase. It scatters. Shards of my own experience, my own trauma within this facility, weren't just bleeding out, they were bleeding in, contaminating the very archives I was supposed to be mending. The barrier wasn't just weakened, it felt like it was becoming a two-way street. And the potential for catastrophic resonance cascades suddenly felt terrifyingly, intimately real. Log accepted. Analysis, bidirectional resonance bleed confirmed. Host memory fragment imprinted onto PN beta 3 matrix. Severity, critical. Integrity breach escalating. Proctor 11's synthesized thought voice was sharp, stripped of its earlier clinical calm, laced now with undeniable alarm. Cultivator Kaido, synaptic flush efficacy potentially compromised. Report any residual host memory persistence post-flush. Before I could even process the implications, my own memory now infecting the archive? The warm light and white noise of the flush protocol washed over me. It felt different this time, less soothing, more frantic, as if desperately trying to scrub away a stain that had seeped too deep. When it ended, the usual hollowness was there, but beneath it, a faint, persistent echo remained, the image of the integration pod, the sterile blue light, my fear, now feeling like a foreign object lodged in my own mind, a fragment of me viewed from the outside. Residue detected, I reported numbly, my voice sounding distant. My memory of the first session. It feels separate, but present. Proctor 11's multifaceted eyes seemed to darken. Acknowledged. Host contamination confirmed. Monitoring escalated to level crimson. Supervisor Unit 9 notified. Proceed to decontamination chamber Epsilon immediately. Decontamination? Not back to my quarters? The green floor panels illuminated, leading away from the pods, away from the logging station, towards a section of the nursery I hadn't seen before, marked with stark biohazard symbols I hadn't noticed until now. Proctor 11 glided beside me, its usual silence replaced by a low, anxious clicking. Decontamination chamber Epsilon wasn't sterile white or blue, it was bathed in a harsh, pulsing amber light. The air hummed with a different frequency, higher pitched, abrasive. In the center stood another pod, sleeker, more menacing, lined not with padding but with what looked like focused energy emitters. Enter the chamber, cultivator, Proctor 11 instructed. Initiating level 3 synaptic purge. This will be significantly more intensive. Intensive? The level gamma flush had felt like sandblasting my brain. What was level 3? Before I could voice my fear, the door hissed shut behind me, locks engaging. The amber light intensified. The emitters pulsed. Agony, pure and absolute, erupted behind my eyes. It wasn't light or sound, it felt like my very neural pathways were being forcibly disentangled, cauterized, rewritten by raw energy. I screamed, collapsing onto the cold floor, consciousness fragmenting under the unbearable assault. It felt like dying, molecule by molecule. I awoke slumped against the chamber wall, saliva drooling from my slack jaw, every nerve ending screaming in protest. The amber light had dimmed. The emitters were dark. How long had I been out? Minutes? Hours? The silence hummed with the aftershock of the purge. My head felt empty. Terrifyingly empty. Not just cleared of residue, but scoured. Even my own core memories felt distant, muffled, like viewing them through thick, static-filled glass. The marker's presence was still there, deep down, but utterly silent, suppressed perhaps by the purge's ferocity. The door hissed open. Proctor 11 stood there, its multifaceted eyes scanning me. Purge complete. Host contamination neutralized. Residual resonance within baseline parameters for dormancy. It sounded relieved. However, bidirectional bleed confirms core matrix instability is accelerating. Standard archival protocols suspended. Director Thorne has initiated. Contingency Weaver. Contingency Weaver? What does that mean? My voice felt alien, disconnected. You are reassigned, Cultivator Kaido. Proctor 11 clicked, gesturing for me to exit the chamber. Your empathic resonance and unique resistance are required for direct core stabilization. You will report to the primary Loom chamber. Now. Direct core stabilization. After the warnings? After the cascade I'd barely survived? It sounded like suicide. But the emptiness left by the purge made resistance feel pointless. Numbly, I followed Proctor 11, back through the now eerily quiet nursery, past the darkened pods, towards the vast central chamber where the Loom itself resided. The chamber felt different. The catastrophic energy surge from my previous integration attempt had subsided, but the aftermath remained. The air hung heavy, still smelling faintly of burnt ozone and sorrow. The colossal Loom structure, though intact, pulsed with a weaker, erratic golden light. The crystalline pods lining the walls remained dark, their captive shadows vanished or inert. The silence was profound, broken only by a faint, high-pitched whine emanating from the spot where the core matrix had imploded, a sound like stressed, cooling metal. And the Weaver, they hovered near the center, where the core's heart had been, their robed forms shimmering, less substantial than before. They seemed diminished, weakened. Their focus entirely inward, pale hands weaving complex, frantic patterns of faint golden light, seemingly trying to knit together the void left by the core's collapse, trying to maintain some semblance of structural integrity. The harmonic singing was gone, replaced by a low, mournful hum that resonated with loss. Weaver, Proctor 11 projected the thought, stopping us at the edge of the chamber. Cultivator Kaido reporting as per contingency. The Weaver didn't turn, didn't acknowledge us directly, but their mental voice entered my scoured mind, faint, weary, yet imbued with desperate urgency. The cascade, severed, deep connections. Substrata, resonance, leaking, unchecked. The archive bleeds into foundation. Requires manual rethreading. A living conduit to bridge the fracture. Their fragmented thoughts painted a terrifying picture. The core's collapse hadn't just destroyed the Loom, it had opened a wound, allowing the raw, chaotic energy from the substratum, the source of the static? To leak upwards, threatening to unravel the entire nursery, perhaps the entire facility. And they needed me, my unique resonance, my resistance, to become a living bridge, a temporary patch, while they attempted the impossible task of reweaving the core's fundamental structure. It wasn't just integration, it was becoming a part of the dying machine, holding it together with my own fragile consciousness. Requires manual rethreading. A living conduit to bridge the fracture. The weaver's fragmented, desperate thought echoed in my scoured mind. Become a living bridge? Use my own compromised neurology, my unique resonance, to manually hold together the collapsing heart of this temporal archive while they attempted repairs? It sounded less like a solution and more like psychic suicide. The agony of the level 3 purge was still a fresh, screaming wound in my memory. Voluntarily plugging myself back into the source of that chaos felt like self-immolation. Yet, the alternative was palpable. The vast chamber groaned around me, the structure protesting the core's absence, the escalating instability. The air crackled, thick with the scent of ozone and the substratum's alien wrongness. Faint wisps of black static, like corrupted data made visible, began to seep up from the floor near the spot where the core had imploded, drawn by the power vacuum. The containment breach wasn't just theoretical, it was happening, accelerating. Without the core acting as a buffer, the raw, chaotic energy from the substratum device was leaking directly into the nursery. Cultivator, Proctor 11's clicks resonated, sharp with alarm, pulling my attention from the seeping static. The Insectoid liaison stood near the weaver, its multifaceted eyes scanning the chamber, its antennae twitching frantically. Structural integrity degrading. Temporal shear increasing. Weaver entity stabilization attempt insufficient. Conduit protocol necessary. Even the analytical Proctor recognized the desperation of the situation. The weaver's shimmering, diminished form turned slightly towards me, their cowled head inclined. The harmonic hum emanating from them was weak, strained, almost drowned out by the rising tide of dissonant static from the substratum leak. Kaido, your resistance, your unique matrix, can temporarily bridge the resonance gap. Allow rethreading sequence. Must act now before substratum overwhelms. It wasn't a request, it was a plea. A desperate gamble from a weakened entity trying to prevent total collapse. I looked from the weaver to the seeping black static, then back towards the alcove where the integration pods, now dark and inert, represented a failed promise of controlled access. There were no other options. My brief, horrifying journey into Oakhaven's nightmare had led me here, to become a literal ghost in the machine, holding back the abyss with my own fractured consciousness. What do I do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, tasting the acrid static in the air. Approach, the weaver projected. Connect directly to the fractured nexus where core detached. Use your resonance focus. Anchor the remaining stable filaments. Create a temporary pattern bridge while I reweave. It sounded impossibly complex, lethally dangerous. Hesitantly, I stepped forward, towards the center of the chamber, towards the spot where the Loom core had imploded into dust. The floor here felt thin, unstable. The seeping black static writhed around my feet, cold, prickling, carrying faint, distorted whispers that spoke of unmaking, of dissolution. The dormant marker within me pulsed faintly, not with aggression, but with a deep, instinctual warning. Reaching the center, I could feel the raw energy bleeding upwards. Looking down, the floor wasn't solid. It was like looking through smoked glass into a deeper void, filled with swirling black static and the faint, rhythmic pulse of the substratum device far below. This was the fracture. The wound. Now, Kaido, the weaver urged, their form flickering violently as a larger wave of static surged upwards. Focus. Connect. Become the bridge. Taking a ragged breath, closing my eyes, I did as instructed. Ignored the screaming warnings from my own instincts, from the marker. I reached out, not physically, but mentally, extending my consciousness, my unique temporal resonance, downwards, into the chaotic energy bleeding from the fracture. I focused on the memory of the Loom's original, stable golden hum, the feeling of connection, of coherent patterns. I tried to impose that memory, that stability, onto the raw chaos below, tried to become the missing piece, the bridge across the void. The moment my resonance touched the substratum static, agony exploded behind my eyes. It wasn't like the core integration. This was raw, untamed, hostile energy. It felt like grabbing a live power line carrying not electricity, but pure temporal noise and alien malice. It surged up, into me, flooding my mind, battling against the stable pattern I tried to project. Black static warred with phantom gold. Whispers screamed against remembered harmonies. The dormant marker roared back to life, not with analysis, but with pure, predatory instinct, fighting against this invasive, dominant signal. My consciousness became the battlefield again, torn between the ghost of the Loom, the fury of the substratum, and the alien predator fragment lodged within me. The pain was absolute, threatening to shatter my mind completely. Agony wasn't a strong enough word. It felt like my very consciousness was being simultaneously shredded and rewritten. The raw, hostile energy of the substratum surged through me, battling the faint, golden echo of the Loom I desperately tried to project, while the reactivated 734 marker tore at both signals, a predatory third party fighting for dominance within the chaotic maelstrom of my mind. Black static clawed at my vision, interspersed with searing flashes of gold, red, and the sickening yellow of Zeta Prime. Whispers screamed, harmonies fractured, guttural roars echoed, a symphony of collapsing realities playing out directly between my ears. My physical body, wherever it now stood or floated in the ruined Loom chamber, felt distant, irrelevant, just a vessel enduring the storm. Hold the bridge. The Weaver's desperate mental command sliced through the chaos, a thin thread of golden harmony against the overwhelming static. Focus, pattern, stability. Do not let the substratum dominate. Dominate? It felt less like dominance and more like mutual annihilation. I tried to focus, tried to cling to the memory of the Loom's stable pattern, but the substratum's raw, alien energy was too powerful, too invasive. It wasn't just noise, it felt intelligent, ancient, hostile, actively trying to corrupt and consume the Loom structure through me. And the 734 marker reveled in the chaos, its predatory instincts finding purchase, amplifying the conflict, feeding on the psychic carnage. Then, amidst the overwhelming sensory assault, a new sensation emerged. A faint, rhythmic ticking. Not the prime anomaly's deep thrum, not the chronometer's precise clicks. This was slower, heavier, almost organic. Like a colossal, leathery heart beating somewhere deep beneath the fractured floor, its rhythm subtly different from the prime anomaly's sequence, yet somehow related. The substratum static reacted to the ticking. Its furious assault faltered momentarily. The black static bleeding into my mind seemed to thin, pulse erratically, as if distracted or disrupted by this new, deeper rhythm. Even the 734 marker paused its internal rampage, its cold curiosity momentarily piqued. The chronovore. The weaver's thought whispered, laced with a new, deeper level of terror. No. Not possible. Containment, absolute. Chronovore? What the hell was a chronovore? Before the weaver could elaborate, the floor beneath the fracture point, where the substratum static seeped upwards, began to glow. Not red this time, but a deep, pulsating violet. The rhythmic, leathery ticking intensified, resonating upwards, shaking the chamber more violently than the core's collapse. The seeping black static recoiled violently from the violet glow, pulling back from the fracture point as if burned. Its hostile energy seemed to curdle, twist, focusing its attention entirely on the new presence awakening below. And the weaver panicked. Utterly. Sever. Kaito. Sever the connection now. Abort. Abort. Their mental voice shrieked, no longer guiding, just pure, primal terror. IT awakens. The Unmaker. It will consume all. But how? How could I sever a connection I was barely maintaining against the substratum's onslaught? The weaver didn't wait for an answer. With a final, desperate surge of harmonic energy, they cut the connection themselves. Not gently. It felt like a psychic amputation. The golden filaments binding me dissolved instantly. The overwhelming flood of data, the warring resonances, vanished, leaving behind only a searing psychic wound and the echo of the weaver's terror. Freed from the roll of the bridge, my consciousness snapped violently back into my physical body. I collapsed onto the dusty floor of the ruined chamber, gasping, shaking uncontrollably, the phantom pains lingering. The chamber was still bathed in the faint violet glow emanating from the fracture point, the deep, leathery ticking now the dominant sound, overriding even the facility's dying alarms. Looking towards the fracture, I saw the black static was gone, completely retreated or consumed. But the violet glow intensified. And from the depths, accompanied by that slow, terrifying heartbeat, something began to rise. Not crystalline. Not shadow. Something flesh. Colossal, ancient, pale flesh, covered in shifting, iridescent scales, unfolding slowly, impossibly, from the void below. It felt older than time, radiating an aura of absolute hunger, not for energy or resonance, but for existence itself. The Unmaker. And the weaver's final, terrified act hadn't saved me. It had merely left me conscious, grounded, and utterly exposed to face the true, primordial horror lurking beneath the Chronos Arboretum. The slow, leathery ticking resonated not just in the air, but through the decaying structure of the Loom chamber, a sound so ancient and fundamental it felt like the pulse of dying time itself. From the fracture point where the core had imploded, bathed in that sickening violet glow, the thing continued its unhurried ascent. It wasn't just pale, scaly flesh. It defied geometry, its form shifting, undulating, composed of immense, overlapping plates that seemed to phase slightly in and out of focus, revealing glimpses of crushing, internal darkness beneath. It had no discernible head, no limbs, just a colossal, slug-like, ever-expanding mass that radiated an aura of absolute, cosmic hunger, not for grief or resonance, but for the very fabric of space-time. The Unmaker. The Chronovore. I lay paralyzed on the dusty floor, every instinct screaming, yet my body refused to obey. The psychic wound left by the weaver's forced severance throbbed, leaving me mentally exposed, vulnerable. The marker within me, the 734 fragment, was utterly silent now, not dormant, but cowering, its predatory instincts completely overwhelmed by the sheer, existential dread emanating from the rising entity. It felt like a wolf suddenly finding itself face to face with a glacier, incomprehensible, unstoppable, absolute. The carnivore rose further, its colossal bulk filling the chasm, pressing against the edges of the collapsed stage. The violet light pulsed from deep within its phasing, scaly hide. As it ascended, the very air around it seemed to decay. Patches of the remaining crystalline flora lining the chamber walls withered instantly, crumbling into gray dust. Sections of the vine bridges sagged, turned brittle, snapped under their own weight. Even the faint bioluminescence of the nursery beyond the chamber entrance dimmed, flickered, threatened to extinguish. It wasn't just consuming matter or energy, it felt like it was consuming time itself, accelerating entropy in its immediate vicinity. My own skin prickled, felt suddenly tight, dry. A glance at my hands revealed faint, spidery lines appearing, like the rapid onset of age spots. The air grew thin, hard to breathe, not just from fear, but as if the oxygen molecules themselves were degrading. Warning, Proctor 11's clicks, faint but sharp, suddenly cut through my implant. The liaison unit was still functional. Carnivore entity detected. Catastrophic temporal decay field propagating. All personnel, evaluate, immediate. The transmission dissolved into static, then silence. Even the Proctor was succumbing. The carnivore reached the level of the chamber floor, its immense, undulating form now dominating the space. The leathery ticking seemed to emanate from its entire being. It paused its ascent, its featureless, phasing surface rippling. It hadn't acknowledged me yet, its focus seemingly elsewhere, perhaps sensing the broader state of the destabilized facility. Then, its immense form shifted. A section of its scaly hide near what I perceived as its front seemed to thin, become translucent, revealing not organs, but a swirling vortex of captured moments within, fleeting images, distorted sounds, colors bleeding together, echoes trapped within its timeless gut. It was consuming time, absorbing moments, perhaps the very echoes the Loom was meant to archive. And within that swirling vortex, one image momentarily stabilized, focused, directed at me. Not a memory fragment from the core. It was the sterile gray isolation chamber, Zeta 7. And standing within it, no longer indistinct or passive, was the figure of the child shadow, its sickly yellow light pulsing erratically, its form contorted in agony, being pulled, stretched, consumed by the carnivore's internal vortex, even across the distance, across the facility's failing structure. A psychic scream, laced with the child shadow's unique static and terror, tore through my mind. It wasn't being attacked, it was being digested. The carnivore wasn't just awakening, it was feeding on the scattered, destabilized echoes unleashed by the core's collapse. And I, still resonating with fragments, still marked, was likely next on the menu. The familiar, sterile white walls of the archive wing were barely recognizable. Bathed in the hellish, pulsating red emergency light, scarred by scorch marks, littered with fallen shells and the scattered detritus of countless dead media formats, it looked like a war zone. The air hummed thick with dust, smoke, and the lingering, corrosive scent of the substratum static, now seemingly free to roam. Behind me, echoing from the ventilation shaft I'd just sealed, how long would that hold? The guttural roar of the chitinous creature reverberated, a promise of relentless pursuit. I sprinted through the debris-strewn aisles, my own ragged breathing loud in the unnatural silence that had fallen since the core's collapse. Where were the elevators? My memory of the facility's layout felt fractured, unreliable, perhaps corrupted by the psychic scouring of the purge or the temporal instability itself. I pushed past overturned carts filled with obsidian cubes, their surfaces now dull, inert. Kicked aside tangled masses of reel-to-reel tape that seemed to writhe like dead snakes. Finally, rounding a corner piled high with shattered crystalline rods, I saw them, a bank of 3 heavy steel elevator doors set into the concrete wall. But my flicker of hope died instantly. The call buttons were dark. The indicator lights above the doors were extinguished. Lifeless. The emergency flush hadn't just destabilized the core, it had crippled the facility's primary systems, including vertical transport. Trapped again. The creature was still somewhere behind me in the vents, likely searching for another access point. Going back down the ventilation shaft felt like suicide. Where else? Stairs? There had to be emergency stairwells. My gaze swept the surrounding area. Further down the main archive wing corridor, beyond the elevators, the path curved out of sight. But closer, almost hidden behind a collapsed shelving unit spewing spools of wire recording, was another door. Not the standard heavy steel of the labs or isolation chambers. This was older, different, thick wood, banded with rusted iron, bearing a single, faded symbol, a simple, downward-pointing arrow. A service access? A route to the sublevels? Or maybe stairs? Just as I started towards it, the air shifted. Not a temperature change, but a strange, visual warping. The space between me and the wooden door seemed to stretch, elongate, like looking through faulty optics. Simultaneously, a high-pitched, whining sound started, seemingly emanating from nowhere, drilling into my ears. Temporal shear? The instability wasn't over, it was just changing form. Ignoring the disorientation, the rising nausea, I pushed forward, fighting against the strange spatial distortion. Reaching the wooden door felt like wading through thick syrup. I grabbed the simple iron latch handle. Locked. Of course. Behind me, a loud crash echoed from further back in the archive wing, followed by the creature's triumphant roar. It was out of the vents. And it was likely heading this way. Frantically, I rattled the latch, threw my shoulder against the heavy wood. Solid. Unyielding. Then my eyes caught something tucked into the doorframe, almost invisible, a small, recessed slot, barely wider than a credit chip. Not a keycard reader, it looked older, more primitive. What? My mind flashed back to the cryptic message, silence is absolute. To the summons card with its intricate Loom/neuron symbol. To Finch's dog tag from Oakhaven. These clandestine organizations, they relied on specific keys, unique identifiers. What identifier did I possess? My name? My biosignature? No. The card. The cream-colored summons card I presented at the obsidian gate. I hadn't had luggage, but the clothes I wore were the same. Had I? My hand fumbled frantically in the inner pocket of my synth leather jacket. My fingers closed around stiff cardstock. I pulled it out. The cream-colored card, slightly crumpled now, the Loom/neuron symbol still stark against its surface. With trembling hands, I slid the edge of the card into the narrow slot in the doorframe. Click. Not a mechanical lock disengaging, but a soft, resonant chime, seemingly from within the door itself. The spatial distortion around me lessened slightly. The high-pitched whine softened, and the heavy wooden door swung silently inward, revealing not stairs, but something far stranger. A ramp, descending steeply into darkness. But the ramp wasn't metal or concrete. It looked organic, like polished, dark brown chitin or carapace, faintly ribbed, curving downwards out of sight. The air wafting up wasn't cold or hot, but neutral, utterly still, carrying a faint, dry, papery scent, like the inside of an ancient, undisturbed tomb. And the silence emanating from it was absolute, profound, swallowing even the distant roar of the creature now rampaging through the archive wing behind me. It felt like a passage between sounds, between realities. A path into the facility's true, silent heart. The absolute silence emanating from the organic ramp felt like a physical entity, swallowing the chaotic roar of the creature and the facility's death throes behind me. It was a silence deeper than any I had ever experienced, profound, ancient, utterly devoid of vibration. The air, dry and papery, tasted of dust and something indescribably old. Behind me, I heard the chitinous creature reach the heavy wooden door, letting out a frustrated, guttural screech as it presumably found the card-activated lock impenetrable from the other side. It didn't try to break through. It seemed this silent passage was beyond its reach, or perhaps its designated operational zone. Hesitantly, gripping the summons card like a useless key, I stepped onto the ramp. The surface wasn't slick. It felt strangely resilient, slightly yielding beneath my boots, like polished, hardened leather or beetle carapace. It spiraled downward steeply into absolute darkness, absorbing my flashlight beam utterly after only a few feet. It felt less like a structure and more like descending into the gullet of some colossal, long-dead organism. The silence intensified with each step, pressing in on my eardrums, creating a disorienting sense of pressure. The descent wasn't long, perhaps 30 feet down, ending abruptly on a floor that felt similarly organic, soft, yet firm, like packed earth interwoven with fine, resilient fibers. I stood in a vast, dimly lit space. The silence here was absolute, profound. No hum, no alarms, no dripping water, no echo of the chaos above. Just stillness. My flashlight beam swept across the chamber. The walls weren't concrete or metal, but appeared to be woven from colossal strands of dark, dried, muscle-like fiber, stretching upwards into an unseen ceiling, forming a vast, organic dome. The air was dry, still carrying that ancient, papery scent. Faint, ambient light, amber in hue, emanated seemingly from the woven walls themselves, casting soft, indistinct shadows. This felt older. Far older than the brutalist concrete structure above, older than Finch's technology. Like the foundational layer upon which the entire Oakhaven facility had been built, a pre-existing organic structure repurposed or perhaps merely intruded upon. In the center of this vast, silent chamber stood a single, colossal structure. Not the blazing Loom core, not the calculating archive spire. This was different. A massive, ovoid shape, easily 30 feet tall, resembling a colossal seed pod or cocoon, crafted from the same dark, polished chitinous material as the entrance ramp. It rested directly on the organic floor, its surface smooth, seamless, save for intricate, vein-like patterns etched across it, pulsing very slowly with a faint, internal amber light, synchronized with the light emanating from the woven walls. Thin, dried, filament-like tendrils, resembling desiccated nerve fibers, snaked out from its base, connecting it to the surrounding walls, anchoring it within the chamber like the heart of some immense, dormant beast. Was this the true core? The original archive? A biological precursor to the technology above? Or something else entirely? I approached cautiously, boots silent on the fibrous floor. The closer I got, the more I could feel something emanating from the cocoon, not sound, not heat, but a profound sense of dormancy, of immense, ancient consciousness held in deep, slow stasis. The air around it felt heavy, viscous. My gaze traced the dried filaments connecting the cocoon to the walls. Were they power conduits? Data lines? Or literal roots? As my light played over one of the connection points on the wall, I noticed markings, faint, barely visible symbols carved into the woven muscle fiber, almost blending in. Not geometric like the archives, not spiral like the West Wing. These looked like stylized, archaic representations of neurons, synapses. Suddenly, a soft click echoed behind me. Not loud, but sharp, distinct in the absolute silence. Like a camera shutter, or an insect's mandible snapping shut. I spun around, heart leaping into my throat, flashlight beam cutting through the dim amber light. Standing silently at the bottom of the chitinous ramp, where I had landed only moments before, was Proctor 11. Its slender, multi-limbed form was motionless, its multifaceted eyes glowing faintly, reflecting the ambient amber light. It held a small, intricate device in one of its delicate appendages, aimed directly at me, not a weapon. It looked more like a complex scanning or recording instrument. Resonance signature contained, its familiar clicks translated instantly, coldly, in my mind. Secondary archive accessed. Aberrant pattern localized within designated quarantine zone. Its head tilted slightly. Weaver protocol dictates pruning of unstable variables. Pruning? The word sent a jolt of pure ice through my veins. It wasn't here to rescue me. It wasn't here by accident. This chamber, this secondary archive, was the quarantine zone. And Proctor 11, the seemingly helpful liaison, was the exterminator. It raised the device, its tip beginning to glow with a focused, intense amber light, humming softly, locking onto me. Weaver protocol dictates pruning of unstable variables. The Proctor's synthesized thought resonated with chilling finality. The device in its delicate appendage hummed, the focused amber light intensifying, locking onto me. Pruning. Not containment, not extraction. Deletion. It felt like staring down the barrel of an existence eraser. My body screamed to run, but where? The organic ramp behind me felt impossibly distant, perhaps even sealed. The vast, silent chamber offered no cover, just the colossal, dormant cocoon and the impassive, woven walls. As the amber light pulsed, ready to discharge whatever temporal severance it was designed for, the marker within me, the 734 fragment, reacted. Not with the cold analysis or predatory aggression from before, but with a surge of pure, primal fear. Not my fear, but its own, the raw terror of non-existence, of being utterly unmade. Its resonance flared erratically within me, pushing against my consciousness, trying desperately to find a way to shield itself, to hide within my compromised neural pathways. It wasn't in control anymore. It was just a cornered animal, sharing my imminent doom. Then, the cocoon responded. Before the Proctor could fire its device, the massive, ovoid structure in the center of the chamber pulsed. Not with its slow, dormant amber light, but with a sudden, intense surge of deep, vibrant violet, the same color as the carnivore's awakening light. The intricate, vein-like patterns etched across its chitinous surface flared, burning like sigils. The dried, filament-like tendrils connecting it to the woven walls tensed, straightened, glowing fiercely with the same violet energy, seeming to draw power from the very structure of the chamber. The air grew heavy, thick with static charge, and the absolute silence shattered, replaced by a low, powerful, resonant drone emanating from the cocoon itself. Proctor 11 froze, its amber device wavering. Its multifaceted eyes swiveled towards the now active cocoon, emitting a series of rapid, confused clicks. Warning. Primary Archive Core, unscheduled activation. Energy signature, anomalous. Chronovore resonance detected. Impossible. The cocoon pulsed again, violet light washing over the chamber, momentarily overwhelming the amber glow from the walls. As the light hit Proctor 11, the insectoid figure glitched. Its form flickered, dissolved into static for a split second, his pop crackled, before reforming, seemingly unharmed but clearly disrupted. The amber light on its device died. It lowered the inert device, its full attention now fixed on the violet pulsing cocoon. Primary core, compromised, its clicks translated, laced with dawning horror. Chronovore imprint, active within matrix. Containment, failed. It wasn't dormant. It wasn't just a secondary archive. This colossal cocoon was the primary core, the original biological archive. And the violet light, the chronovore resonance, the leathery ticking it felt, it wasn't just the prime anomaly below Oakhaven, fragments, imprints, perhaps the original source of that time-consuming entity, were embedded within this core. Had Finch built Oakhaven on top of this, trying to contain or study it? Had the core's collapse above somehow triggered this deeper, more fundamental awakening? As these terrifying realizations flooded my mind, the cocoon pulsed a third time. And the air around it shimmered. Not with heat, but with temporal distortion, far more intense than anything I'd experienced before. The woven walls seemed to ripple, colors bleeding, the faint amber light fracturing into impossible spectra. I saw fleeting, superimposed images, not just echoes, but entire scenes, flash in and out of existence around the cocoon, swirling nebulae, ancient jungles under alien suns, cities made of pure light, geometric shapes folding into infinite dimensions. It felt like the core was bleeding timelines. Then, directly on the smooth, chitinous surface of the cocoon facing me, an image formed. Not projected, but seemingly growing from the pulsing violet light within. Stark black lines against the violet glow, resolving into a familiar, intricate pattern, the Loom/neuron symbol. The Weaver's mark. Finch's symbol. Etched onto the stage, onto the summons card, and now appearing on the surface of this ancient, perhaps alien, archive core. What did it mean? Was the Weaver connected to this? Controlling it? Or merely another fragment, another echo, trapped or integrated within its structure? Before I could decipher the symbol's appearance, Proctor 11 let out a high-pitched series of clicks that translated as pure panic. Divergence cascade. Temporal field collapsing. Integrity 0. Evac. Its warning was cut short as the violet light pulsing from the cocoon exploded outwards, not as heat or energy, but as a wave of pure, spatial distortion. The chamber warped. The woven walls seemed to flow like liquid. The floor bucked. Proctor 11 dissolved into iridescent dust, its final click silenced. The last thing I saw before the wave hit me was the Loom/neuron symbol on the cocoon burning fiercely, seeming to expand, reaching, pulling me into its intricate, impossible pattern, promising not integration this time, but utter, temporal unraveling. The wave of pure spatial distortion hit like a physical blow combined with sensory annihilation. It wasn't just light or sound, it felt like the very coordinates of my existence were being forcibly rewritten, stretched thin across impossible dimensions. The vast organic chamber, the pulsing violet cocoon, Proctor 11 dissolving into dust, all vanished, replaced by an vertiginous, nauseating sensation of falling through space, through time, through countless overlapping realities. Images, sounds, smells assaulted me, fragments of lives never lived, echoes of futures aborted, glimpses of worlds governed by alien geometries and impossible physics. It was the raw, untamed data stream of the multiverse, pouring directly into my fractured consciousness. The marker, the 734 fragment, shrieked within me, not in fear, but in agony, its predatory structure ill-equipped to handle this level of pure, unadulterated temporal chaos. It felt like it was dissolving, fragmenting further, its cold analytical presence shattering into a million tiny, static-laced shards. My own consciousness felt equally fragile, threatening to disintegrate entirely under the overwhelming flood. Then, amidst the disorienting torrent, one image locked into focus, sharp and clear, impossibly persistent, the Loom/neuron symbol, burning fiercely against the violet light on the cocoon's surface just before the cascade. It pulsed in my mind's eye, a single point of intricate, ordered stability amidst the unraveling chaos. Instinct, or perhaps a final, desperate command from the dissolving weaver, took over. I latched onto the symbol mentally, focusing every remaining shred of my being onto its intricate pattern, its underlying structure. It felt like grabbing a lifeline in a cosmic hurricane. The moment my consciousness locked onto the symbol, the chaotic flood shifted. It didn't stop, but it began to flow, to channel through the symbol's pattern imprinted on my mind. It felt like the symbol was acting as a filter, a focusing lens, imposing a semblance of order onto the raw temporal energy pouring through me. The agonizing sensory assault lessened slightly, becoming, not manageable, but survivable. The tearing sensation eased. And I realized, with a jolt of horrified understanding, what was happening. The Weaver's final act, the prime anomaly's surge, my own desperate focus on the symbol, it had transformed me. No longer just a conduit, a bridge, or an anchor. I had become the filter, the processor, the living embodiment of the Loom/neuron symbol, tasked now with manually, impossibly, trying to regulate the raw temporal bleed emanating from the compromised primary core. Where was I? The sense of falling ceased, replaced by a feeling of suspension within a vast, non-space. Opening my eyes, or perceiving visually through whatever sense remained, I saw not darkness, but infinite potential. Swirling nebulae of raw temporal energy, streams of fragmented memories flowing like rivers of light, collapsing probability waves forming and dissolving like quantum foam. It was the space between timelines, the raw material from which the Loom, and perhaps reality itself, was woven. And I was connected to it all. Threads of energy, mirroring the Loom's filaments but raw, untamed, flowed from the swirling chaos, connecting directly to me, channeled through the Loom/neuron pattern now seemingly etched onto my very consciousness. I could feel the fragmented echoes, the child's terror, the core's placidity, the substratum's static, the chronovore's hunger, not just within me, but flowing through me, demanding to be processed, harmonized, woven. The task felt impossible, Promethean. How could one fractured human mind possibly regulate this cosmic torrent? Failure meant not just my own dissolution, but potentially allowing the raw, unmaking chaos to bleed further, to unravel reality itself. Then, amidst the overwhelming flow, I sensed others. Faint points of resonance, similar to my own, scattered throughout this interstitial space. Were they other weavers? Other anchors? Or fragments of consciousness, like the echoes, trapped between moments? One point felt familiar, Distant, weak, but carrying the unmistakable signature of the weaver from the Loom chamber, fragmented but persisting even after their apparent dissolution. They weren't gone, merely scattered. Like the core's memories after a flush. Could I reach them? Could we, together, impose enough order on this chaos? Focusing again on the Loom/neuron symbol, the filter, I tried to extend my awareness outwards along the connecting threads, searching for the weaver's faint signature, hoping to reinforce their pattern, to weave together the weavers themselves before the unraveling became absolute. Stepping onto the cool, damp earth felt like breaking the surface after drowning. The transition from Oakhaven's collapsing inferno to this place was absolute, jarring. Above, alien constellations glittered cold and sharp against a sky of deepest indigo, devoid of any familiar moon or planetary bodies. The air, tasting faintly of ozone, rain, and chlorophyll unlike any I knew, was breathable, cool against my scorched skin. I stood at the edge of a forest composed of impossibly tall, slender trees whose faintly luminous, blue-green bark provided the only light, casting long, shifting shadows across the mossy ground. Where the hell was I? The stone steps leading down from Subcore Delta simply ended, merging seamlessly with the earth, leaving no visible portal, no sign of the Oakhaven facility behind me. Just the silent, luminous forest stretching away into unknown depths. The silence was profound, but unlike the dead, sterile quiet of the isolation chamber or the foundational silence of the primary core chamber, this felt alive. Pregnant with unseen life. Faint rustlings echoed from the undergrowth, strange, multi-limbed insects skittered across glowing fungi, winged creatures with membranous wings flitted silently between the colossal tree trunks. Nothing overtly hostile, not yet, but undeniably alien. My first instinct was survival. Check my physical state. Burns throbbed on my arms and face where the heat blast had caught me. My uniform was torn, filthy. My head ached from the psychic assaults. But I was functional. Alive. Then, the internal check. The marker. The 734 fragment. It was still there, a cold, quiet node deep within my consciousness, but profoundly changed. The level 3 purge, the battle with Zeta Prime, the feedback loop overload, the temporal cascade, the final severing. Something in that chaotic sequence had altered it. Its predatory hunger, its cold analytical drive, felt muted. Suppressed. Almost dormant. I could still feel its presence, its alien structure grafted onto my neurology, but it wasn't actively asserting itself, wasn't flooding my thoughts. Had the transit, the exposure to this place's unique resonance, somehow forced it into hibernation? Or was it merely waiting? Observing? And the resonance, the connection to Oakhaven, to the echoes, it felt different too. Thinner. Frayed. Like a radio signal almost out of range. I could still sense the distant, chaotic thrum if I concentrated, a phantom limb of psychic connection, but it no longer felt like an anchor dragging me down. Had the core's final collapse, or perhaps the journey through whatever subcore delta was, partially severed the link? Was I truly free? Or just farther away? Taking tentative steps into the luminous forest, the soft, mossy ground yielding slightly underfoot, felt like stepping onto an alien planet. Which, for all I knew, I had. The scale was immense, the trees soaring hundreds of feet into the unseen canopy above, their blue-green light casting everything in an ethereal, underwater glow. Strange, bell-shaped flowers pulsed with soft violet light, emitting faint, harmonic chimes as I passed, a disturbingly beautiful echo of the crystalline curator. Was this place connected to Oakhaven? Another layer? A source? Or merely a random destination spit out by a collapsing temporal machine? Finch's notes, the core's data streams, they hinted at accessing other realities, other timelines. Had I fallen through one of the cracks? I walked for what felt like hours, deeper into the silent, glowing forest. No paths, just the yielding moss and the colossal trees. Hunger and thirst began to gnaw, grounding me in my physical reality. I needed shelter, water, food. But what was safe here? Could I drink the water pooling in strange, cup-shaped leaves? Eat the bizarre, glowing fruit hanging heavy from crystalline branches? The risks felt astronomical. Just as despair began to set in again, the landscape changed. The dense forest opened into a vast clearing. And in the center, nestled beside a lake whose surface shimmered with captured starlight reflecting the alien constellations, stood a structure. Not brutalist concrete, not organic chitin. This looked ancient. Impossibly ancient. A single, towering spire made of seamless, white material, like polished bone or ivory, spiraling upwards, easily 1,000 feet tall, its tip disappearing into the darkness beyond the reach of the forest's glow. Intricate carvings, depicting celestial patterns and beings that were disturbingly similar to the chronometers, covered its surface. Faint, cool white light emanated from within the spire, spilling out from elegantly arched openings near its base. It radiated an aura not of menace or decay, but of profound, serene, ancient knowledge. Hope, fragile and cautious, flickered within me. Civilization? Or at least, intelligence? A source of potential help? Or just another, perhaps far older, more powerful enigma in this impossible reality? My Oakhaven-honed paranoia screamed caution, but the sheer, undeniable presence of the spire, its serene beauty after the horrors I'd endured, drew me forward. As I approached the base of the spire, stepping out from the luminous trees onto smooth, cool flagstones surrounding the structure, one of the arched openings glowed brighter. A figure appeared, silhouetted against the internal light. Tall, slender, robed. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought it was the Weaver, somehow reformed, transported here alongside me. But as the figure stepped out into the clearing, into the ambient blue-green light of the forest, I saw it wasn't the Weaver. Similar in its unnerving grace, but different. Its robes were pale, shimmering. Its face, though indistinct in the dim light, wasn't hidden by a cowl. And its eyes, they glowed with a soft, steady, golden light, radiating not cold analysis or detached sorrow, but a profound, ancient calm. It raised one long, elegant hand, not in threat, but in greeting. And a voice, clear and melodic, resonated not in my mind, but in the air itself, speaking a language I shouldn't understand, yet comprehended perfectly. Welcome, traveler between resonances. We have been expecting you. Adrift. Utterly adrift in a sea of raw potential, the space between moments, where timelines flowed like iridescent rivers and fragmented memories glittered like cosmic dust. My physical form felt distant, irrelevant, my consciousness a single, fragile point of awareness tethered precariously to the Loom/neuron symbol now seemingly burned into my very being. The symbol acted as a filter, a lens, imposing a fragile structure on the overwhelming chaos, preventing my immediate dissolution but simultaneously making me a focal point, a processor, for the raw temporal energy. Threads of this energy, multicolored, vibrant, flowed through me, channeled by the symbol. I could feel the echoes within them, whispers of joy, screams of terror, sighs of boredom, fragments of countless lives, experiences, possibilities, all demanding to be sorted, harmonized, woven. The sheer scale of it was terrifying, exhilarating, threatening to overload my human mind. The 734 marker, though suppressed, pulsed faintly within me, its analytical nature finding a perverse satisfaction in the sheer volume of data, even as the raw emotional content threatened to shatter us both. Then, amidst the overwhelming torrent, I felt it again, the weaver's faint, scattered resonance. Not a single point, but multiple fragments, like sparks thrown from a dying fire, adrift in the same interstitial space. They pulsed weakly, their harmonic signature almost lost in the background noise. Weave together the weavers. The thought surfaced, perhaps my own, perhaps a residual echo from the weaver themselves. Could I use this symbol, this filter, not just to survive, but to act? To gather the scattered fragments, reinforce their pattern, perhaps restore the entity who seemed to hold the key to understanding, maybe even escaping, this place. Focusing my intent, I tried to extend my awareness through the Loom/neuron pattern, using it like a net, searching for the weaver's specific harmonic signature amidst the chaos. It felt like tuning an infinitely complex radio, sifting through layers of static and competing signals. Gradually, I found them, faint points of golden light flickering erratically in the temporal currents. Reaching out mentally, channeling the energy flowing through me, I tried to connect, to send a pulse of coherence, of recognition, towards the nearest fragment. It pulsed back weakly, a flicker of awareness, of gratitude. Encouraged, I reached for another, then another, trying to draw them together, using the Loom/neuron symbol as a template, reinforcing their shared harmonic structure. Slowly, painstakingly, something began to coalesce. The scattered points of golden light drifted closer, drawn by my focused intent, their individual pulses beginning to synchronize. A faint, harmonic hum returned, cutting through the background noise, growing stronger as more fragments joined. The weaver was reforming, piece by agonizing piece, anchored by my resonance. But the process drew attention. The raw temporal energy flowing through me intensified, became more turbulent. And within that turbulence, shapes began to form. Not echoes this time, but something else. Darker. Hungrier. Entities native to this interstitial space? Or fragments shed from the collapsing Oakhhaven reality, given monstrous form by the chaos? They were indistinct, shadows with too many angles, eyes that burned with cold, empty light, drawn to the focused energy of the weaver's reformation, drawn to me, the anomaly holding it all together. They sense the mending. The weaver's voice, still fragmented but gaining coherence, pulsed weakly in my mind. Parasites. Entropy. Unweavers. Must complete before. Before what? Before the reforming weaver attracted too much attention? Before I burned out under the strain? The dark shapes drifted closer, circling us like sharks sensing blood in the water. Their presence felt like static, like anti-resonance, actively trying to disrupt the fragile harmony the weaver and I were trying to establish. The golden light flickered under their influence. The connection felt tenuous, threatening to break. I poured more energy into the symbol, into reinforcing the weaver's pattern, ignoring the approaching unweavers, ignoring the searing pain as more raw temporal energy flowed through me. The weaver's form solidified further, their familiar robed shape becoming clearer, the golden light intensifying, pushing back against the encroaching shadows. Almost there. Then, one of the unweavers lunged. A formless shape of pure, devouring static, it shot towards the coalescing weaver, aiming for the heart of their reforming structure. The weaver cried out, a pure note of harmonic pain. But before the unweaver could strike, I reacted. Or rather, the marker reacted. With a surge of cold, predatory fury, the 734 fragment, silent until now, lashed out through me, projecting a bolt of pure, jagged orange energy, the echo of primal terror weaponized, directly into the path of the unweaver. The impact shredded the dark shape, dissolving it into harmless static. The marker hadn't just been hiding, it had been adapting, learning to navigate this space, learning to fight. And it had just, perhaps inadvertently, saved the weaver. Saved us. The enemy of my enemy. The thought was chilling. Welcome, traveler between resonances. We have been expecting you. The voice, clear, melodic, resonated not just in the air but seemingly within the very structure of my bones, a calming frequency utterly unlike the chaotic energies of Oakhaven. The robed figure stood serenely before the immense ivory spire, golden eyes radiating a gentle, ancient light that held no threat, only curiosity. Understanding? Expecting me? I croaked, my voice rough from disuse and the lingering taste of ozone and fear. Where am I? Who are you? The figure inclined its head slightly, a gesture of profound, unhurried grace. You stand upon the shore of unwoven time, a nexus point where frayed realities converge. And I am merely a listener. One who observes the resonances that arrive. Shore of unwoven time? Nexus point? It sounded like poetic nonsense, yet felt terrifyingly literal after my transit through the collapsing temporal field. How did I get here? That place. Oakhaven. Oakhaven was an unstable node, the listener replied, its golden eyes seeming to gaze past me, perhaps perceiving the faint echo of the facility still clinging to my resonance. An attempt to forcibly contain and analyze temporal fragments it was ill-equipped to understand. Its collapse was inevitable, accelerated by external interference and internal imbalance. It gestured vaguely back the way I assumed Oakhaven lay, across dimensions. Subcore Delta, the primary geothermal conduit Finch attempted to repurpose, defaulted to its original function, shunting critical instability outwards, towards stabilization nexuses. Like this shore. So, my escape wasn't an escape, but an ejection. A piece of problematic data shunted to a cosmic recycle bin. And you knew I was coming? We perceived strong resonances approaching the nexus, the listener explained. Yours is unique. Fractured, yet coherent. Tainted by multiple, conflicting signatures, the core's echo, the substratum static, the predatory fragment you carry, and something older. Deeper. Its golden gaze sharpened slightly, focusing intently on me. The signature of the prime anomaly's recalibration. It knew. It sensed everything. The marker within me pulsed faintly, a flicker of cold awareness acknowledging the listener's perception, but remained otherwise dormant, suppressed perhaps by this place's calming resonance or the listener's own passive field. The marker, the 734 fragment, is it dangerous here? I asked, needing to know if the predator was truly asleep. All fragments carry potential danger, traveler, the listener replied calmly. Yours is, currently inert. Its aggressive frequency dampened by the transit and the ambient field of this shore. It observes. Learns. Its nature remains unchanged, but its expression is contained. For now. For now. Not exactly reassuring. And the locket? I pulled the empty, tarnished silver heart from my pocket. I found others, like this. The listener's golden eyes softened, if such a term could apply to glowing orbs. Ah, the echo catchers. Relics from earlier cycles. Attempts by fragmented minds to anchor themselves against the temporal currents. They hold faint resonance signatures, yes, but the essences they sought to contain have long since unraveled or been absorbed elsewhere. Empty shells. It explained the lockets from the hollow, the well, this shore, all failed anchors in a sea of temporal chaos. So, what now? I asked, feeling adrift, overwhelmed. Am I trapped here? Trapped is a matter of perspective, traveler, the listener mused. This shore is a place of transition, of potential. Resonances arrive, stabilize, and sometimes depart, finding new anchors, new pathways. Yours is particularly potent. The confluence of energies within you, it creates possibilities. And attracts attention. Attracts attention? Like the chronometers? The Oakhaven security? Or something else? The listener tilted its head again, its gaze drifting towards the vast, starlit ocean stretching away from the shore. The chronometers are regulators, yes. Limited by their programming. Oakhaven's constructs were crude, broken echoes themselves. But there are other forces. Entities that navigate the interstitial spaces. Some seek balance. Some seek knowledge. Its golden eyes flickered back to me. And some merely seek to consume resonance. Your unique signature makes you a beacon. Just as the chilling implication settled over me, escaped one set of hunters only to potentially attract cosmic predators, the air around us shifted. The calm, serene atmosphere grew tense. The faint, harmonic hum emanating from the ivory spire faltered, replaced by a low, discordant drone echoing from across the starlit water. The luminous trees of the forest behind me pulsed erratically, their blue-green light flickering. The listener's serene form stiffened. They sense you already, it whispered, its melodic voice hardening. Quicker than anticipated. The imbalance you carry, it sings loudly across the dimensions. Across the dark, shimmering surface of the lake, far out near the horizon where the alien sky met the water, a light appeared. Not the steady glow of a star, but a jagged, angry tear in the fabric of the sky itself, pulsing with a furious, internal red light, the same incandescent red as the breaching archive core. And from that tear, something began to emerge, spilling out into this serene reality like spilled ink, blotting out the stars. It was coming for the beacon. It was coming for me.